right, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Headliner PodPod, where we reach out into the podverse and find podcasts to listen to. You may notice that I sound like I'm talking to a microphone this week. I got quite a bit of hate mail about my previous recording setup, and so you win. Here we are, microphone time. As you may know from seeing last week, we are doing a Wheel of Podcast episode where we will be spinning the wheel, listening to clips of the podcast, and trying to figure out what's going on. Is everybody ready?
Yep.
Do it.
Okay, here we go. First up, I'm just going to go straight down my Zoom column. So, lucky contestant number 1, Christian Garrett, also known as Christy. Let's see what you get with your spin. Did you have something you wanted to say?
The crowd just went wild. It was just nuts. They said my name and like the crowd's going crazy. I can hear it. I'm not sure if you guys can hear it. I'm really excited.
Are you DMing our podcast right now?
Yes.
I can hear it.
The wheel has
The
spoken.
failing writers. All right. Okay. It's not an attack at all. Love it.
Before we even get started, Christy, what do you think this podcast is going to be about?
I think this podcast will be specifically about failing writers, and it's going to be like a podcast about like talking to people that are trying to get done, or like people talking about like how writers have failed. I'm intrigued.
So you think it's about writers who are failing. Love that. Excellent guess. Now let's listen to a clip.
And I know basically from my history, I would never want to sign a 2-book deal, like what the book that you would at one point pitch, over the course of 3, 6, 12 months, there's no way, at least for me, books tend to grow and change, and that's part of the attraction. But, having said that, yeah, I'm trying to write with an open mind and with curiosity and without pressure. And I'm trying to find, I've always kind of said that like writing a book is like completing a jigsaw puzzle, but except you can't see the picture on the front of the box and the pieces are constantly changing, which is to kind of say that it's more or less the hardest thing in the world. But when, or at least in my experience, twice, when you find, I guess, what I call like the keystone.
Nice.
All right. After hearing that clip, let's get your initial thoughts and reactions.
The guy interviewing, it sounded like he was really enjoying a muffin, which I love. And I liked the puzzle analogy. I feel like I've heard that before. But it works every time. So I'm glad that our system, the algorithm saw that, was like, yeah, that's a cool little analogy. Let's get that whole little bite in there. Yeah, great. I'd hit subscribe.
All right. So you'd hit subscribe. That's great. I want to go back to one thing you said in your answer. What type of muffin do you think was in his mouth?
I'm gonna say poppy seed. And I'm thinking that this is like a morning podcast. Like this was recorded in the morning. Very, very scrumptious muffin.
Excellent. And one last question, Christy. You're doing great. You're doing great. After hearing the clip, what do you think this podcast is about?
I think it's about people that are writing rather than actually maybe failing writers. I mean, at least this person's like, maybe, I don't know who Oliver Mall is from the clip, but they're talking about their process. And I think that maybe this podcast leans more into process and structure and narrative rather than the actual failing thing. And maybe they talk about that where like you have to fail in order to succeed. Definitely think they lean into that.
Excellent. All right, I'm going to read to you what this podcast says about itself right from their website, and the rest of you will be our panel of judges and see how close Christy got to the podcast description. The Failing Writers Podcast, a podcast for anyone who ever dreamed of being a writer, then went to put the kettle on. Join 3 success-starved word wranglers as they stumble towards their shared ambition to become proper writers. Cringe at their teenage poetry, cheer as they compete in writing challenges, gasp as they ask best-selling authors and BAFTA-winning writers all the questions no one else dares. Just be prepared for raw, undiluted failure. Judges, what do we think about Christy's answer?
I think he was kind of on the money with it. I mean, I personally thought the failing writers thing was just going to be like, oh, that's just like the cute thing that every struggling creative says. They're failing at it. They're really not. They're doing the thing. They're just saying they're failing at it.
Yeah, writers are just so hyperbolic.
You know, Max, as a guy who wrote a book over the past year, I'm a little offended, but you're not wrong.
You wrote a book?
Yeah, it was a writing exercise over the winter. I wrote a 100,000 word book, and I'm editing it.
Just a small.
Oh, yeah,
little
just-
exercise.
Congratulations.
Just
That's
a-
amazing.
Thank you.
Like
Yeah,
in our week break, you wrote a
No.
100,000?
It was over a month and a half, Alyssa. I'm not that crazy. I'm
Okay.
not that
Just a month and a
hyperbolic.
half.
Yeah.
Yeah, a book over a month and a half. No big deal. That's
Yeah.
great. It takes me that long to write like a blog post. So,
I
congrats.
think I read a book every month and a half, maybe. So
Yeah. I'm a slow reader, but apparently not a slow writer.
An entire episode on your book, Nicholas. And I also I can think of one that we might try to get you booked on if we can.
Yeah, I was actually
There
thinking
we
of
go.
just like subscribing to the podcast, but you know,
I don't know. Please tell us.
no, I was that's the thought. I was hoping you would.
Fortunately, I don't. All right. Excellent round 1, Christy. Thank you, judges.
Can we just speak on the timing of this, though, with the writer's strike? I mean, the Wheel did a great
Yeah.
job of curating a very topical podcast. So
Yes.
the Wheel is really needs a round of applause for this one. The writers
Yeah,
won. They didn't fail, apparently. They beat Hollywood. So good job, writers.
Yeah. Applause.
Not these types of writers, but they sound like book writers, but you know,
Yeah.
writers
Yeah.
in the general sense.
Also, for what it's worth, for the people listening, Max is saying that because the strike literally ended like 2 days ago from the time we're recording it, not from the time it airs.
That's correct. And with that, let's go back to the wheel. Next up, we have Max.
Let's go. Let's do this.
Wow. Staying in the same category, we have a winner. The Joys of Binge Reading. Now, Max, just like I asked Christy, our previous contestant, what do you think this podcast is about?
Another excellent choice by the Wheel. Very well curated. We went from writing, now we're going to reading. I'm going to guess we're about to dive into some books or something here. Maybe reading blog posts or podcast show notes. I don't know. We'll see what we're reading, but certainly going to be a heady, no pun intended, a heady podcast, I'm guessing.
Now, for your clip.
It's maybe a little cliche to say, but we were best friends. We had very similar brains. And we really understood each other. And so one of the great joys for us both, I think, was whenever Mum was writing something, she'd give me the pages that she'd written over the last few days. And it was very much the case with the Seven Sisters. So I have been reading them since, I think it would be 2013, I think you're right. Yes. So it would be the case that she would go off, write 20 pages, 30 pages, and then I would get those pages and we talk about them and the plot and what she envisaged happening. And they were some of the most special conversations I ever had with her.
Indeed, you were there on the ground level right from the beginning, and all the little intricacies of the earlier books were somewhere planted away in your brain.
Yes.
All right, Max. Initial thoughts, reactions, hopes, dreams, anything that comes to mind.
So, sensing a big theme today from the wheel, we got a lot of, this sounds like a writer interview actually, and another set of Brits. So a lot of English writers. It seems to be the theme of the wheel's curation today, which feels like a secret, maybe like an Easter egg, because I'm actually going to London next week. So I feel like maybe this is some type of ploy related to that. And you're just trying to get me to meet up with these podcasters when I'm in town. So I'll be happy to. If you guys want to hang out when I'm in town, I'll be in London next week. So that's my thoughts here. Also, sounds like an interesting podcast as well.
Excellent. So just so you know, Max, the wheel and I are just a part of the simulation. We are not controlling it. This is just what is coming up.
It's just a little suspicious is all I'm saying.
All right. So this podcast, The Joy of Binge Reading with Jenny Wheeler, never be without something remarkable to read. We recommend the latest and best in mystery, suspense, romance, and historical adventure. So you'll never be without a book you can't put down. Interviews with successful series authors and their passionate readers, where readers and writers share the guilty pleasures of binge reading. Max, does that elicit any sort of new thoughts of the podcast clip? Now that you've heard how they're presenting themselves on Apple.
I feel like I'll get a lot more insight into books with this podcast than I will from my actual binge reading, because I'm a notoriously slow reader. So I will probably have to backfill with this with my slow reading, plus getting the insights from the pod. They can do the reading for me. And yeah, I love it. That's what podcasts are for. Diving deep into things that you don't have time to read yourself, but you can hear a little 30-minute episode about it.
Awesome. I love that. Now, judges, let's review Max's response to the podcast. Let's get meta.
Meta. I think the only thing, were the first people Aussies? Or Brits? Or do we know? I'm really bad at accents, but I thought they were Aussies.
Wow, they might have been.
I'll be real with you. I didn't.
Does anybody have a take?
Accent?
Like, no accent. We thought they were Americans.
I didn't think they were Americans. I just didn't commit anything to memory about an accent.
I'd like to throw New Zealand into the mix as well.
I was just gonna say.
That's dangerous. That's a dangerous move.
I mean, that's a small percentage of people, and if you're right, I'm going to give you a lot of credit.
Can we get a sub wheel going just to figure out their accent?
Location wheel. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
We can have a second wheel. Absolutely.
More wheels.
All right. So we've tried the wheel. We've tried the game show. It's devolving into less of a game show and more of a discussion on the wheel roll 3. And Dash, hopefully we won't end up on the podcast about accents. I think that would be very difficult for you.
We know what the hand is doing that's spinning the wheel.
Let's see what the
More
wheel
than a simulation. Am I up?
Oh, you're up.
All right.
This is not a test.
The fit.
The Fit Life with Jessica. Come on down. I guess.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is about fitness and exercise. Just a wild guess.
We were just talking about before we started with tank top discussions.
Yeah,
yeah, he's got so many dad bod opinions.
I've got my dad bod self insecurities.
To be fair,
right?
We could be wrong. It could be a podcast about fit people talking about Jessica's.
You're right. And I'm going out on a limb. I said it was a wild guess. I didn't say I was 100% sure.
Sure.
Or if they're British, it might be about being beautiful.
That's true.
If she has a British Aussie Kiwi accent, I'm going to be floored right now.
It's 3 for 3, baby.
Yeah, like something's up.
Are you ready for your clip, sir?
I'm ready. Let's do this.
If you want to do a 10K, which is 6.2 miles in January, well, you better be training October, November, and December. Because if you're not a runner, you can't just wake up on January 15th and run a 10K. I mean, I suppose you could, but it would not be all that comfortable. And you'd be hella sore and possibly injured the next day. So thinking through like, okay, if I know I have a race in January or February, then I've got to adhere to this training program, right? I've got to make sure I get in my runs so that I can hit my goal of the 10K or the half marathon or whatever it is. It could be a 5K. It could be anything. But a race is a huge, huge motivator, especially for those longer distance runs. Another idea for you is to hire a coach or join a membership, right? If you need external accountability, if you need someone to check in on you and tell you.
Well, this is an apt one, Dash.
Right. Well, Oliver's training. She got me. She said 10K. She was going with the metric system. I thought she was going to be a Brit, but and then she backed it up with 6.2 miles. So we all learned how far 10 kilometers is. But it sounds like the podcast is about training for a 10K or those longer races and how a race schedule or planning schedule is necessary and not just waking up on race day and trying to run 6.2 miles. So seems to be about fitness. Yeah, I doubt every episode's about running, probably different topics covered in different episodes. And from a busy mama, I see. So
I'm about to read you the description, and I think you nailed it. Let's chat openly and candidly about how to create and maintain healthy habits with our fitness, nutrition, and overall well-being. This is a place you can get real life, health, and wellness advice from a busy working mama who has a passion for helping other mamas find their way to health and happiness. And you can find her on Instagram at The Fit Life with Jessica. The website, www.thefitlifewithjessica.com. I won't read her email because there are...
We don't need to do that.
But yeah, so any other thoughts from the peanut gallery on this one?
I could hear... there's a specific type of reverb that she had. I think she's recording it in her kitchen, and it just sounded like a nice kitchen. I feel like I could tell
she's got to be a good cook.
It was like marble. Maybe there was some stuff reflecting off of an espresso machine, like a nice food processor. Like it just sounded like a open floor plan kitchen.
It looks like Restoration Hardware in the episode art.
Oh yeah,
right.
Oh,
there's definitely
Yeah.
Restoration Hardware furniture. Like West Elm's not even nice, like on that level.
I'm feeling LA, maybe like a loft,
West Coast,
Just like a
yeah.
very bright space.
clean
Sure.
living. Yeah.
Oh, total just sunshine. I could hear the
Sage has been
sunshine.
burned.
I meant bright recording wise, Christy. I'm
Oh,
actually
I know, but also
I know you mentioned LA, but I'm holding on to the hope that she lives in New England so we can keep the English thing going for as long as possible.
Okay,
But
I like.
I
that.
say Midwest for her accent. I'm throwing it out there. Just the way
Really?
it started out.
You go
I'm
New Zealand and Midwest.
throwing it out.
As a
Hot takes only here.
As a Midwesterner, Midwesterns like it's either accentless or they're from Minnesota. Like that's it. So like this sounds like straight up like a coastal lady or a person that's trying to sound like coastal lady. I like the idea that it's like a Midwest person.
Lake life? That's coastal.
Lake life. Okay.
Lake
okay.
life. Yeah.
Hashtag lake life.
I'm sorry. I'm like so past the accent at this point. I'm amazed that Christy just geolocated this person via her hearing only the audio. You're like, oh, she's in a kitchen because of the reverberations. Like, that's amazing. And now I want a sub segment of this podcast We show Christy audio clips and see if he can guess the location via just hearing the details of the recording. That's I'm learning a lot about you guys. Nicholas wrote a book. Christy's got this crazy audio detection.
Hey, Christy might moonlight at the NSA or something. Totally.
Christy, you might be semi-related to a baby whale.
I've watched the movie Blowout too much. Okay, that's it.
She did say hella. I just want to put that out there.
That's L.A.
Maybe
man.
she is from the Midwest then.
Hell is a West Coast thing too.
That's West Coast as hell.
That very West Coast.
I'm in Nashville and I say hella. Like,
Yeah, I was gonna say most
sorry.
Midwest people I know say hella a lot.
if she said oop,
I don't think East Coast people say a lot of hell. I can say that.
Well, there's a band called Hella that was based off of that word, and they're an LA band, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, I have a friend from Sacramento who uses hella a lot. She does, yeah. So I don't know.
But given that we before we started the podcast, we were talking about working out to look good in our headliner tank tops. I feel like Jessica's gonna need a headliner tank top because she's working on it and
You got a tank top
look
on.
great in this tank top. So shout out to her.
Thanks, Jessica.
Your tank top will be offered to you. Whether or not you accept it is your choice.
You have her email, dude. You know how to get in touch with her.
Everyone on this list actually is from the headliner email list, and they emailed us their podcast and gave us their email. So we have 100% communication channels to everyone we listen to. Just keep that in mind.
We know where they live.
Oh.
No, Christy, you do because you moonlight at the NSA.
No, I do.
It's just you know where they live.
Yeah, it's just you.
Christy, how high up would you say the subway tile in her kitchen stopped?
I'm gonna say at her shoulders.
Shoulders. All right, moving on to the next. Nicholas, you are up. Thank you for another round.
Joy.
We're going to go to spin that wheel and see what's in store for our very own author.
Failing author, specifically.
Executive.
So I'm going to guess it's a business sort of, I don't know, life coachy podcast, but my inner nerd just wants to hope that it's about Twin Peaks and how well executed the show was, maybe?
There's always a chance that everything we do is about Twin Peaks, Nicholas. So
yeah, when I'm in the call, there's a good chance of that.
All right. Execupeaks. I know it's in here. In here somewhere.
It could also pass as like a podcast about 90s spreadsheet software, because that's what it sounds like.
Oh, sorry. Just a point on that. I've been listening to Darknet Diaries nonstop since our Jack Rysider, the Harry Duran segment, the couple podcasts, last podcast, right? And he has the best Microsoft Office-esque puns, whatever. So I just wanted to
continuing to sell me on the show.
It's worth, what's that?
Said you're continuing to sell me on the show.
It's, yeah, if his puns are actually hilarious. He's got a bunch of tech puns at the end of every episode, and he's got a great one about Microsoft Office that I'm not going to repeat because I've forgotten the punchline. Sorry to interrupt this segment.
No, that's fantastic. We should definitely bring more puns into this as well. I couldn't think of anything that were appropriate. Are you ready for your clip, Nicholas?
I am.
Here we go.
And the case of Harmony says 12 different transformers. So it was a showcase, or is a showcase, in terms of how an environment could reconfigure, and expresses many different ideas And one of the interesting things about that is people look at it and they're struck by the drama of it. It has quite a visual impact. But that was not really designed. That actually was created because we were incorporating all these different ideas and all these transformers. So it's another example of if you take all of the parameters and all the things you're trying to accomplish, connect those dots, well, things often create themselves. And I feel like Harmony Sales created itself. We have lots of other projects we're doing right now. We're doing kios in some other places where those are kitchens that go indoors and outdoors. We're building the geotech I mentioned. We're doing what we also call Rios, which room in, outside, and we're doing one of our vacation rental.
Kios and Rios, Nicholas.
Okay. So my guess is that it's some sort of business adjacent podcast, maybe something to do with architecture or like realtors or like, I don't know, housing. That's what I got from like talk of Transformers. And I think he mentioned at the very end a keynote somewhere. Yeah, I mean, that's a shot in the dark.
I think that's pretty close to this episode, but let's hear about ExecuPeaks. ExecuPeaks celebrates the latest updates from the entrepreneurial and business realm. These brief conversations display golden nuggets of wisdom from achievers now working roles in executive leadership, management, and entrepreneurship. Audiences learn how each individual's mind, soul, and intelligence contributes to defining their life successes. Sasha Talks disclaimers apply. I'm not sure what that last thing I said means, but it does say Sasha Talks disclaimers apply.
It's just a saying, like Sasha Talks disclaimers apply, guys.
Okay,
Yeah,
so I actually know who this podcast is because of Disco.
Okay, thank God.
So they have like a couple of different podcasts, and Sasha Talks is one of the like podcasting like segments that they have on their website. For fun fact. So it's a different podcast that is associated with them.
Where is she from?
Midwest.
Midwest.
Yeah. Oh, great. So
not
maybe
Minnesota.
It is just a Midwest slang thing too. You say hi.
Hey, y'all.
A hey, y'all. A Sasha Talks disclaimers apply.
Christy, real quick, could you echolocate where was that recorded?
I'm gonna have to say that it was either recorded in like just an office. It's a kind of a dead space. There's very little reverb. It's definitely really hard to locate that one. It's not as obvious as the other one was.
Now, when you say dead, is it good dead or bad dead?
Good dead. I mean, it's also about like how, they want to, this is part of their branding, obviously. This is something that they like. They're 160 episodes in, and this is like definitely what they want to sound like. So I'd say that's a good thing, knowing what you want.
All right. Jesse, you are up. Let's spin that wheel. If I could. There we go. 3, 2, 1. Spin.
Money.
Oh, I was wondering if you would get shuttle. All right.
What's shuttle?
Okay, to be fair, let me read you the full name of Chuddle's podcast.
Awesome.
I think you should just guess before.
Chuddle the Pod, a horror movie club. That's the official full name.
Oh, it's Cuddle. Like Cthulhu.
Oh. That's cute.
Oh, that's awesome.
Cuddle.
I thought it was a British thing, like chaps in a huddle.
Or like chubby guys huddling up to talk about scary movies.
The chubby huddle?
The chubby huddle? That's what I thought.
the new dance move.
The chubby huddle.
Huddle.
The shuttle.
The channel. All right. Let's listen to that clip.
What question are we on?
Oh, Jesus Christ.
For beginners?
Jesus Christ. Yeah, it's for beginners. Go watch it.
Yeah.
I mean, next one takes us.
Do you guys hear that? I didn't leave the window open this time.
We never do anymore, guys. We're going to remember one of these days.
All right, let's just crack this guy open. All right, we got the Chuttle Harbinger of Doom. Gentlemen, what's he saying?
You know, like pee stuff, maybe? Bodily fluids.
Yes, pee.
Yeah.
Porn.
Fluids.
There's nothing that stood out to me more than normal. Really, it'd be the found footage thing. Maybe if
nostril
I could
stuff?
see somehow the camera movements maybe bother somebody.
It's a little bit gooier,
good.
but I mean, it's nothing too extreme in any one direction. So I think there's nothing too triggering. So there is.
Lord have mercy.
Jesse, I think you got the pod of the week.
Yeah, so I did hear them say chuttle. So it's not cuddle. It's not like a play on words there. But this is indeed sounds like a group of friends that like really dark humor, and they watch a lot of these creepy horror movies together. And it sounds like they just kind of talk about them and make fun of the scary parts together, which I mean, that is one of the better parts of watching a horror movie with your friends, is being able to have those jokes and moving forward with them. But yeah, I'm going to try to blaze past the rest of
The sucking noises they made were disturbing, to say the least.
You mean horrific?
Yes.
In the best
Neat
use of the
echo,
word.
like, Christy,
for
our
this subject.
bat on the podcast, did you get anything as to where they might be?
I think they're recording in a room together, and it just sounds like because it doesn't sound like, when our recordings are like a Zoom recording, or like whenever I do my podcast, you can kind of tell. But like, it sounds, first of all, it was just absolutely chaotic. I think that my bat senses are like thrown like completely for a loop.
I'm gonna really quick just agree with Christy. They're definitely in a room together, because there isn't like a delay or like this latency you get from a Zoom call, which I think everyone kind of forgets is a thing, because the pandemic happened in 2020 and everyone switched to Zoom for a minute on podcasts, so we just got used to there being a pause between people talking. But they're definitely like in the same space.
I think one of them may have been elsewhere.
Really?
Possibly. They certainly didn't all have the same microphone.
Yeah, that entirely possible.
the slurping sounds were entirely too close at the same time for there to be only one microphone.
Oh, no, I don't think they used one mic to record necessarily. They could have just thrown a Tascam on the table and plugged into it.
Is there a podcast where it's just one mic and they're all talking to it very closely, like their faces are only inches apart? Because that sounds like a great gimmick.
Oh.
Yeah, that would be a pretty good gimmick for a podcast.
I tried doing that with a podcast, and it just sounds. It does not sound very good.
Sure.
I'm going to have nightmares from this 60-second clip tonight. Let me read you about Chuttle the Pod. Welcome to Chuttle the Pod, the spookiest, gooeyest, and most scream-tastic movie club in town. Whether you're a fearless horror buff or a curious newbie, our fiendishly fantastic horror movie club is for you. Join the terrible trio of Ross, Brian, and Sam as we embark on a delightful weekly adventure through the darkest corners of cinema. From timeless classics to hidden gems and the latest releases, we've got it covered. Looking for a place where you can embrace the darkness with a smile? Join our horror movie club on a journey of fear, laughter, and the joy that comes from sharing scary movies with fellow horror lovers. Nicholas, question for you.
Yeah, what's up?
is the horror genre cinema?
Yes. Okay, so full disclosure of all the genres of film, not my favorite, but there are a lot of my all-time favorites in it. So something like Suspiria I consider to be cinema because it's one of the best shot movies you'll ever see. But, there's also stuff like Friday the 13th, which is kind of mid in my opinion.
My next question is, what is cinema? I actually don't know. I just know that if you're into film, it means something.
Yeah, so I don't know if this is the actual definition, but this is the one I always give people. I consider cinema like when a movie sort of transcends the medium a little bit and it just deeply affects you. So like if you ask me like to review a movie, I'll usually either call it a movie, a film, or cinema. Movie is like Dumb and Dumber. You're hanging out and you're just watching it kind of and enjoying it. Film, a little better. Might get an Oscar, might be a little something special. And then cinema is just like, hey, you're going to watch the Stanley Kubrick movie and you're going to think about it for a week straight.
What about picture? When you say, let's go watch a picture, which one are you referring to?
Usually that only happens when I'm doing a transatlantic accent and watching something from like the 50s or earlier, Max. Like, yeah, let's go watch this picture. It's called Roman Holiday. That Gregory Peck,
Come
Yeah.
here, I want to watch a picture.
We're going to the picture show. Come on now. Taxi cab. I'd like to go to the nearest movie palace.
10 tickets.
Yeah.
Excellent. All right. Whether it's cuddle or chuddle. Oh, no, we've decided it's chuddle, right, Jesse?
Yeah, I think that's what they said.
Well, let's leave chuddle and chortle our podcast train back over to the wheel.
Before we chortle off chuddle, can I just give a shout out to their episode art? Because as a designer, I appreciate how cool their little avatars are, the little alien guys. And I assume that's them three in monster alien form. Or actually, there's no monsters there. Sorry to offend them if I said that. There's an alien and a couple
we got a zombie.
hairy fellas.
It looks like the second guy is like a werewolf almost. So
yeah, but I think that's such a cool illustration. So I just wanted to give a shout out to that. And
a lion from Wizard of Oz or something.
Kind of.
Yeah. I think that's super cool. And I wish they were
cool.
above the waveform. Like that would be nice if they just popped it right above that waveform. And I'm excited for their 3D avatar versions in the metaverse or whatever, when we can see the 3D alien version of them talking in their video podcast. But
You think their
just wanted to
language
give a
would
shout out to the
Advertising
artistry.
crazy.
Fucking sounds? It would be horrible if that was the case. All right, let's move on. Now, Alyssa, we're on the final spin of the day. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Here we go. Have a winner. Follow your passion. Alyssa, you there?
Yes.
I do want to talk about this. You're validating the fact that they brought it to you, even though they caught you off guard. Yeah. You're validating, there's probably some value here. Give me 15 minutes and then I'll come and find you and we'll talk about this. You'll have a much better conversation. And as a speaker, I speak on stages all over the place, and I do corporate events and stuff. And I have people that sometimes will come up to me and disagree with what I say, right? And I want to get defensive right away. But John Acuff, who's a speaker and author friend of mine, he has a response that I've actually started using. I just tell him, you know what? You may be right. I'm not admitting anything to them, but I'm also not making myself defensive. They come up to me and say, that thing you said, it's wrong because of X, Y, Z. You know what? You may be right. And then later on, when I think about what they said, because maybe there's useful information in their critique, maybe not. Maybe it just needs to be dismissed and I don't need to have an argument with somebody at an event.
All right, Alyssa. From the looks of your face, I feel like maybe we should institute a pod pass where we put this one back in. But
No, I'm just awkward, so I just make weird facial expressions. Like,
yeah, nothing against the podcast. I don't want to put you on the spot, but
no, I mean, I think that it's like a motivational speaker, perhaps. He travels, he does corporate events. Feel like business leadership, motivational speaking on how to better your business or become a better leader. And that's his passion, hence the follow your passion. And like most motivational speakers, he's like, hey, you too can do this. And here's how.
that's so close to what I think it actually is. Amazing. The picture on his website is him talking to a group of people and motivating them. And follow your passion. It's all about following your passion and creating a great living with it doing so. You'll hear and learn from other entrepreneurs and get tips and inspiration to follow your passion as well. Awesome. Anyone else have any thoughts about Follow Your Passion with host Erwin Wills?
You might be right.
I think that's pretty on the money, but the one thing that just jumps out to me and I can't take my eyes off of it, and I'm going to hear a piece of glass break in Max's head when I say it. Why is passion lowercased on his title?
Yeah.
If everything else isn't. That's not criticism. Like it actually, in its own weird way, it kind of calls your eye to it, which, hey, good design is technically grabbing your attention. So if anything, that's actually really clever. But the whole time we watched the clip, I was like, something is off about this. And then I picked it up and I was like, oh, that's what it is.
All it reminded me of is just like, I'm looking at the 7-Eleven sign where like the N in 11 is lowercase. I'm like, what is going on?
Oh,
here?
Christy, why'd you do that? Why'd you ruin 7-Eleven for me now?
Did you not know that?
No, I didn't. I just saw the numbers and I was like, that's a 7-Eleven. It says so on the thingy.
No, look it up. The N on 7-Eleven is lowercase.
I don't believe you, and I refuse to be proven wrong on this.
It's like how Spotify, it's crooked. It's not that bothered
Oh,
me
no.
when I learned that.
Wait, what?
Yeah. If you look at the little Spotify logo, it's not perfectly
She's
in
right.
line.
That is very troubling. Okay.
Bothers you, doesn't it?
I have to rethink a lot right now.
Mm-hmm.
I just imagined you going up to him after one of his lectures, which is kind of what we did in a way, because he just spoke to us via the medium of podcasting. And you go up to him and you say, all the words are uppercase besides the last one. I don't agree with that. And he's going to say, you might be right, or you might have a point. And he's going to go home and think about whether it was a good decision or not.
Yeah.
And he's not going to argue with you. So
look, on some level, I think it's actually kind of genius because you know what? We're sitting here and we're talking about it.
See,
that's
I
why
read
he
it
gets,
like
that's why he
differently.
gets the big bucks.
That's why he gets the big bucks, and I'm following his advice about following my passion.
I read it like differently. Like when I read, I like make a picture. So like for that, it was like, move that button. It's like, follow your passion. So like it had a different emphasis on it. Is
okay.
How I pictured it. So I like it personally.
No, I think it works. I had to like bring it up because I found it so fascinating.
Yeah, I love the idea of us also talking about the cover art and the presentation. Like we're talking about the audio, we're talking about the clips, and I also, as a designer, obviously I'm biased, but I love that we're talking about the cover art and maybe even the audiogram styles at some point too. I think we might have made these, but it'd be cool to see what they're making and we can give our thoughts there. So yeah, I mean, I don't hate it, Nicholas. That's one thing I'll say. As a designer, I'm like, I see what you mean, but I'm interested actually. So
okay, it's good to know. I thought you'd have this moment where you're like, oh no, I just realized that too.
Pretty agreeable. I rarely am like, I hate that,
Yeah, I'm kind of the same way where I'll say something stands out to me, but I won't really feel any which way about it.
Bringing in the podcast art as part of this is a great idea. We should try that next week. when we're back on the pod episode, PodPod. I do have to ask one last question for this one. Christy, were you getting any readings on where this was recorded?
Honestly, the passion was so overwhelming that I think that the only people I'm able to geolocate are fitness podcasts in rich homes.
So you're more of a fancy bat.
Yeah, I'm a fancy bat specifically.
Right. Well, it's exciting. Thank you all for taking part in this week's podcast. It was exciting to learn that we have an author, a podcaster, and I think we have, and also to learn about some of our disabilities. Dash's ability to hear the difference between New Zealand and Australia.
We don't know if that's true yet.
We don't know.
She may be right, though.
And also the learning about the terminology hella moving from the coasts to the heart of America in the Midwest. I didn't realize that was a thing. So it's something we can all ruminate on. Is there anything else anyone would like to share? Milestones, personal, professional, or otherwise? Any shout outs?
Thinking about taquitos from 7-Eleven.
Yeah, does anyone else have any other like design choices on famous logos they want to ruin? Is the McDonald's M actually an upside down W? Like anything at all?
For the record, I don't think 7-Eleven was ever up there in the best logos. I don't think you're hurting too many people's feelings.
The taquitos are top notch at 2 a.m.
They're known for the taquitos, not the logo.
Sure. Because they didn't uppercase the N. It's the thing holding them back. Totally.
And they didn't make the 7 out of 2 taquitos, so big missed opportunities.
Just taquito font for the whole thing.
Well, all right. I think that's an excellent. The idea of a font made out of taquitos has certainly made me hungry, and I might need to go get myself a snack. Thank you, everyone, so much for being here today. We couldn't do this without you. Appreciate all you do. Some of you even flew in for this over the internet, but you did fly in. So excited to keep this going. I think we might go off wheel next week. It's been a really good time, but I think it's time to try something a little new. And we're going to work on our pun game for future episodes.
Yeah, you could roll them by me next time, Oliver.
Oh my God. You guys!
Let's get out of here.
Just a nice spin on things.
Nicholas, cue our exit music.